having you here because I really enjoyed your film, Simón, based on a short film you did previously. And it's about a Venezuelan, I call him a refugee immigrant who's seeking asylum, and he was involved in a lot of the protests.
Venga, Simón, de pana, yo no sé qué te pasa, hermano. Nosotros no nos podemos dar el lujo de no involucrarnos en este peo, huevón, y tú lo sabes.
Tell me what prompted you and motivated you to do this film?
I mean, just the sheer fact of being Venezuelan and being immediately affected by everything that's happened in our country. But specifically, it was 2017 for me. I guess at that time I was a little more aware, being 22 years old or however old I was, and I was studying film here in LA, and just with months and months of protests and kids my age being killed on the street or taken, imprisoned, and tortured, that just hurt me. It really affected me. So, and it triggered a lot of that guilt of like watching it from afar. It's like it feels I'm involved because I am from there, but at the same time I'm not there. And at the same time I was studying film, so that short film was combining those two things of like, I am interested in pursuing film, I need to do a short film to graduate, and what do I do with this guilt and with this pressing need to do something for my country? So that's what turned out to be the short, and through there the feature.
You used the word guilt.
Yeah.
Why?
I think it's the difficulty of balancing what one might call the right for one's own happiness and safety versus the collective responsibility of your own people and society. So how do you balance the right to pursue a better life, perhaps that you can't be afforded in your own country, but at the same time your people and the people you know or don't know but are your kin are still suffering? So what do you do about it? Do you just turn an eye, or you want to do something more but you're far away, so you don't feel you're directly helping the situation? So that's where that guilt comes from, of like, I feel I'm doing nothing to help liberate our people.
Well, can I tell you something? You definitely did something, so you can go to sleep, knowing that you made, a mark, and it's affecting and impacting a lot of Venezuelan people, but also, and I feel your film is really good for people that are not Venezuelan to capture that. I find everything that you say amazing only because you were able to express the guilt that you felt personally in that film, in the sense that the lead character struggles with the guilt of wanting or should he be in Venezuela while he's in Miami, safe from what he had to deal with in Venezuela, but also dealing with whether he should be getting back and whether he should be with his people. Yeah,
if there's a big chunk of me in the movie, it's definitely that, and that's what I felt I could speak to the most, because since I left when I was 15, I haven't lived the day-to-day trials and tribulations that Venezuelans have to go through living there. Mm-hmm. So what I have experienced the most is that distance of like, I'm seeing it from afar, I'm suffering from afar, but I'm not there, and that tension.
Can you give us a quick history lesson? And I know that in these over-politicized times, it's so easy to fall into a political debate about things, how the political spectrum applies
Sure.
to situations. But I want people to understand what happened in 2017. I think most people know who Hugo Chavez was, and the fact that Venezuela, descended into a dictatorship. What happened that had students on the streets?
Sure. So, and before even getting to the specifics, I would say that it's something I try to reflect in the movie, which was kind of specifically that to what I felt was the most important and universal things that mattered, which were there's people being kidnapped, tortured, and killed for their opinions. Mm-hmm. We've gone through stages of shortages of food, of electricity, of access to medicine, and 25% of our population is left. So just those brute facts should be a very strong alarm that something is deeply wrong with how things are going, that we need change. And to not get caught up in like, oh, but is the dictatorship a left-leaning dictatorship or right? Because then we've lost the thread of what's important. We're talking about human rights and crimes against humanity. So I felt that was important, and hopefully that's what I would try to transmit through the movie, to not get caught up in certain categorizations that I feel diffuse what's actually really an issue. It's just periodically we can see moments where we gain the strength and the hope to fight as a people. 2017 was a year of that, where some of the injustices committed by the dictatorship were so just obvious and evident that people gathered. So, it's months of protesting plus the economic collapse.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking like the country as a whole had lost weight on average by person, no access to food, like you see in the movie, even trying to get insulin or something was difficult.
And this is a country that at one point was the richest Latin country on earth, at least in South America.
No, yeah. If you Google 1950s top countries in GDP per capita, it's like the U.S., New Zealand, Venezuela, and something else. So we're in the top 4 in the world of GDP per capita.
Right.
And yes, and we fell into absolute, not just mass poverty, but extreme poverty for 60% of the population.
Tiene culpa tuya, ¿viste?
So the movie covers this character, the title character, Simón, who's amazingly played by, tell me his name again.
Christian McGaffey.
Christian McGaffey. They didn't want to say there's an NFL running back that has a very similar name. But amazing job, by the way. You have an amazing cast. Everyone did a great job.
Sure.
Him in particular. So this character we find it in Miami, which I want to point out, as someone who grew up in Miami, you did a really good job of capturing Miami as well. I mean, that's probably another character in the film as well. We find him in Miami, and he's struggling with the decision to claim political asylum because it would mean that he can't go back. He's having flashbacks, and then we start realizing what happened, why he left Venezuela, and we joined his equipo, as he describes it, which is the group of people that he kind of assembled his friends to go out and protest. Him and his friends become targeted. They get kidnapped. They get tortured by the Venezuelan military. Explain to me a little bit about how the process of coming, because it's not your life story. I mean, there's So how did you come up with this character? Is it based on people you know or have heard of?
I spoke to many or several. Or a handful, specifically, of guys who fit the exact profile of Simón. Young, they were leaders of their university group. They went out to protest. They were taken. They were tortured, and they had to flee the country. So I got to actually converse with the literal protagonist of the movie in different variations, and just really make sure that what I was writing was true to what they were feeling, what they experienced, and also getting some specific details of certain things that happen. And then at the end, it was just like this collective fusion of all these details from both newspaper, from reports, from them personally, and from my own emotions, and then that's what Simón was, this compilation of everything.
There was one particular scene that stuck out at me, and I don't know that anyone else would have picked up on it or understands it, but it's when he's being brought in to sign the papers. There's a Venezuelan flag, but there's also a Cuban flag behind the middle. So was that guy from the Cuban army, and do you want to explain to people?
Sure. I wasn't intent or didn't want to make it explicit, but it's just, I think for Venezuelans, in Cuban, it's obvious and it's kind of a well-known thing. And to kind of see everything that's happened in Venezuela, in a way, is a bit like we were invaded by Cuban intelligentsia without actual military explicit warfare or invasion. It's just the ideas that have seeped in from Cuba. So it's just more of a nod to the influence and the powers that are at play there. When I was writing that scene with the military, there's so much you want to say, and you want to say and it's not just Venezuela, it's not just Cuba, it's also Russia, it's also Iran, and all these international, transnational influences that are happening. But I'm also writing a movie, and it can't feel like a documentary, and you don't want the exposition of the character to feel like you can hear the screenwriter yelling at the audience to try to explain the situation. Yeah. So, you try to leverage and find a good balance. So at the end, the colonel, the military, if you speak Spanish and you are familiar with the accents, you would hear that, no, he's Venezuelan, he's not Cuban.
I sense
but at the end, what the colonel says is something like, you're just students, you don't even know what's really at play here. And that's the most I thought was realistic that he would say. He's not going to go and explain, I wanted to avoid the typical evil plan of him telling, oh, this is Cuba and Russia, and this is the plan. Yeah. He could only hint at it and hint at it with the flag. But I think for people that do know the story, it does lend itself a lot to the credibility of it, because Cuba
has, as a third world country, which it is now, has the most sophisticated intelligence for such a poor country, and they infiltrate, and for you to even show a glimpse of that was very interesting. Very interesting. So did very well. You won the Goya Premios.
A nomination.
Nomination. Has that happened already?
Yes.
Okay, so you were nominated for Premios Goya, and I also saw that you were released in Venezuela. The film. So I would not have expected that.
Me neither.
Now, were you able to go?
Oh, that's a tricky. No, it's a tricky story. In 2023. We never expected the movie. I always assume when I started writing the movie, I'm never going to be able to go back to Venezuela, and it's of course not going to be released in Venezuela. But we wanted the certificate of nationality of the movie to certify that it's a Venezuelan movie, because if we had that, we could then be set as the movie for the Goyas or for the Oscars or for the thing. You need to, like, obviously if you're going to represent Venezuela, it needs to be certified that it's a Venezuelan movie, but that had to go through the government. So we're always like, we're never going to get that stamp. Nevertheless, after some back and forth, we sent everything in. They did send us the certification that it's a Venezuelan movie, because we complied with, like, it's a Venezuelan director, writer, the cast is Venezuelan, it's about Venezuela. We obviously legally it made sense that we would. But in that document, they put that notwithstanding, we deemed that the content of this movie might be violating the law against hatred and peaceful cohabitation of Article 20, which is 10 to 20 years in jail. So it's like, we had this document and it's a Venezuelan movie, but they're sending a warning of, this was prior to distribution, so that was just a Vimeo link we sent. But once it's like, all right, but Article 20 is the distribution of content that incites hatred. So they were saying, like, if you put the movie out there, potentially you could be charged for inciting hatred or violating Article 20. But since none of us live there, it was like, fine, but we have the document, so now we could potentially be put as the movie for the Goyas, because the Goyas are selected not by the government, but by the Academy of Filmmakers, let's say, like the Academy here, the Academy there, which are just the filmmakers, wherever they live, they vote online. So it's a democratic, free process. So that's why we had hope that that could be the case, and it ended up being the case. We got selected to be the representative for the Goyas, and then the Goyas nominated us, and that whole thing happened. And then the other thing with the certificate is that legally, every Venezuelan movie has a legal right to be at least 2 weeks in theaters, just to incentivize the industry. So it's like, well, now we had the document, and we talked to the theaters there, and they're the brave ones, because they're the ones who said, you know what? Even if maybe they come and shut us down the first day we release this movie, we're not gonna pre-censor you and not do it because we're scared. We're gonna put it in our theaters, and we'll see what happens.
And what happened?
Prior to that, because you asked going back, in the middle of that time, so it's like we set a release in September. It's like, okay, it's gonna come out all over the country in September. We're gonna see what happens. And in between that, there was the Venezuelan Film Festival, the most important film festival in Venezuela, that wanted or accepted to have the movie play. So it was like, wow, the first time it's gonna play in Venezuela is at this festival, which we weren't going to go to, except 5 days before. I got, again, guilty that this movie's about fighting and risking something, and I was going to, like, not go, and even if it meant some physical danger, I was going to opt out of it and just watch from afar, meaning I wanted, obviously, the movie to win, and I say obviously because if the movie won the most important festival, it would get harder to censor later because it would get more press. It would make more sense that it should be the movie to go to the Goyas. And at the end, this is not just from an artistic, I want my movie to do well. This is why we made it. We want more eyeballs on it. We wanted to have an impact. So all of a sudden it became so important to win this festival. And it was up to the 5 judges, and 2 of them are outspoken pro-government. So it was up to these 3 dudes actually to, if they were going to vote for it. So something about that felt really hypocritical. Like, I want these 3 guys to vote for the movie if they think it's the better movie of the festival, but I want them to risk themselves in a way while I watch from LA or Miami or wherever I was, and I hope they are brave enough to do that without me being there. That just felt hypocritical. So then 5 days before, I decided I need to go to Venezuela after 14 years of never having been. So then I called one of the guys I interviewed to write the movie, who's like a real life Simón. I was like, what's the deal with the border in Cúcuta? Because I wasn't going to go through the airport. I'm like, and he's like, actually, security is pretty relaxed right now. He's like, you know what? Come to Cúcuta. I'll pick you up and we'll drive together back into our country. So it was a very surreal.
From Colombia.
Living my own movie of like, I'm with a real life Simón in the co-pilot. We're driving into my own country. I'm like with a movie in hand after 14 years of not having been in Venezuela. scared, and there's so many military checkpoints, but then going to the festival, showing the movie, which was really scary.
At the military checkpoints, did you show your American passport?
No. I went with my Venezuelan ID, not even Venezuelan passport, Venezuelan ID. And then just going to the festival, really, it was uncomfortable to watch my own movie in Venezuela.
Oof.
I'm just like sitting there like, what did I do? Why am I here?
Oh my God, looking around.
I started to regret. Well, 10 minutes in, the projectionist came down like, are you the director? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, why? He's like, well, just if anything happens, let us know. I'm like, why? He's like, well, I'm seeing what the movie's about. Like, and I'm like, it gets so much worse. This is 10 minutes in. It like gets so much heavier. So it was very nerve-wracking to be there. And it ends, and then it's like written and directed by me. I'm like,
Oh my-
fuck.
And then afterwards, how did people react to
the
you?
reception was really.
Dude,
it was.
you're my
it was very-
hero.
No,
That story right there,
no.
you're my hero.
No, it's the guys we're representing in the movie are the. But that was super powerful. I was surprised because I never knew how Venezuelans in Venezuela might react to the movie because it's obviously done from an outside perspective. But my lesson there was, it hit harder inside the country. Because I think I've learned now that it's even a luxury to be able to feel pain for your country when you're out here, because it's like, let's talk about Venezuela right now, let's cry about it, and then I get in my car and I'm in LA and I can think about other things over there. I think it had been years that people had just not touched that subject matter anymore because it's too painful and it's your reality, so you can't constantly be letting yourself feel that pain. So I think the movie it's what they would tell me, it's like it just like ripped that out, so it just hit stronger, I think, in a way, because I think here we allow ourselves periodically to mourn for what's happening. Over there it's like more periods go without feeling that.
Diego, I mean, I'm sure you know this, and I'm sure people around you have acknowledged this to you. What you just described right now, going to screen your film in Venezuela, and all that experience that you just described, I do find that heroic. As an artist, I'm not comparing you to the protesters. I'm not comparing you to the people that are being tortured. But to put yourself at risk like that and be part of the most important reaction to this movie is by the people in Venezuela. That's the most important thing. Although I will say this is a great film for someone that doesn't understand the Venezuelan issues and who isn't Venezuelan to watch.
Yeah, I intentionally wrote it thinking like, if you know Venezuela doesn't even exist, like you can access this movie and connect with it.
Just a couple minutes left. We're going to switch gears a little bit to something lighter. Love the sketches that you've done with Joanna Houseman. How did you guys meet, and how did you guys do those videos together?
I've just been a fan of Joanna for, I don't know, since she's been making videos. So I feel like I've grown up watching her videos always before I got into film or anything. So I just like, she's so like witty, smart, and funny. Love the videos. So once I started making like sketches and then got into film, made the movie, I don't know, at some point I felt, I guess, courageous enough or something to like DM or something, and then a couple of DMs back and forth. But at some point, hey, let's meet, and then we met, and then creatively we like got along so well. So for me, it's been a bit of like inner fanboy, or like, I get to meet her, and then, but also just write something together, and we just, I think, both love so much just like coming up with something creative and going out and shooting it and doing it for the love of it, which was that sketch. It's like, that's not for anything. We're just like, let's do something.
Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing a couple, but the one that I'm thinking about is where you're explaining to the American guy.
Yeah, that's for sure.
How because I think Americans sometimes are just not really completely aware of the world. They see everything through their American lens and through the lens of having a privileged American life. And I think that when they make an effort to be sensitive to certain things, that actually also exposes a little bit of ignorance. And I think you guys captured that perfectly in that sketch.
Sure, but I think we're all caught up in our own lenses, and part of that, sure, the American straight man helps see that, but it was also a bit about how kind of also absorbed you are by your own perspective. That I think with Venezuela, it's like we get defensive or we'll talk about our own country, about how bad it is, but the moment somebody else points it out from an outside perspective, now you get defensive about it. So it was also to maybe make fun of that as Venezuelans. You're like, this. We're talking about all the bad things, but somebody else says it, and now like, well, what are you talking about? Venezuela's the best country in the world.
That's a very human thing. I think,
Yeah.
like, you know, you can talk about your family, but if somebody else says
Yeah,
something,
it's like-
points out the same exact thing about your
Yeah.
family, you're like, well, what do you know, mind your own business. So is comedy something that, because you were also on camera for that, is that, because I you know, when I first saw Simón, I almost, and written, directed, produced, edited. I think you were also the PA on your own film, so I figured, oh, you'll probably be the star as well. But you wanted an act because yeah.
I find acting super enjoyable, especially for skits and sketches. But no, acting's not like what really motivates me. It's like writing and directing and editing. I'll act if it's fun or something, but for the movie, I'm like, there's no way. If I act in this, I'll be sacrificing my directing because I can't. Some energy is dedicated to the
Right.
thing, so I'm like, no way. But acting's fun. Yeah, I enjoy it.
A great way to put it, man. Dude, I could probably talk to you forever, you know, but I think that, like I said, I'm not just blowing smoke up your over here. I think that you made a big, important thing. It's one thing to make a really good film. It's one thing to make entertainment. And it's another thing to make something that's as impactful and that's so from the heart. And the fact that you went to Venezuela and you air screened it in Venezuela and sat in the audience, that's wow. You're gonna be telling people about that when you're old, and it's gonna be, you know, definitely a big notch. And we'll be looking out for this mysterious next project. So now that you're on the landscape, right? Sure. You and Joanna, you guys are representing the best of Venezuelan minds here in the United States. So, dude, is there anything else you want to mention before we wrap it up?
No, just thank you so much for your kind words, and I appreciate, because I know, and you talking about your ancestry, because it's like, you know, what this means and it comes from, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome, man. Diego Vicentini, you've been on Checkitow.